Once again, we are doing a redraft, and if you have been enjoying these redrafts thus far, then please be sure to drop a like to make sure that the series continues. The first video did pretty good, second video not so much, so if you want to show me that this is something that you want me to continue, then drop a like. But yeah, let's get into it. Also, if you want to subscribe to the channel, I won't argue with you. Do it. I dare you. Don't be a bitch. Do it. Seriously, subscribing pays Rudy's bills. So do it. With the #1 overall pick, the Philadelphia 76ers select Jayson Tatum. This is the way that it should have gone initially, or I guess they should have taken him at the 3rd overall pick, and my, what history would look like if this is what actually happened. In hindsight, this ended up being one of the best draft night trades in league history when the Celtics traded down from the #1 overall pick to get Jayson Tatum rather than selecting Markelle Fultz, which at the time seemed like the no-brainer decision. Of course, not the case anymore. But it's interesting to think what the Sixers would have looked like with him, because Jayson Tatum is kind of exactly what they were looking for. They were trying to find a perimeter scoring player, and they were trying to find that in Markelle Fultz. Would have better found it in Jayson Tatum, not only because Jayson ended up being a better player, but thinking about how that team would have functioned with Ben Simmons as the lead ball handler. Markelle Fultz would have taken away from that a little bit when he was dribbling. Obviously, going into the draft, Markelle was a great three-point shooter, but Jayson Tatum has a lot more of an off-ball game. He did, especially starting his career, so the fit would have been better. It would have been better defensively. It would have been a better asset for if they wanted to trade for somebody later. Just all around, the Sixers on draft night making that decision. It wasn't on draft night. They actually made the trade a couple of days before it. But either way, that trade is probably the single thing you can pinpoint to the failure of the process and the failure of the Ben and Embiid duo. With the #2 pick, the Los Angeles Lakers select Donovan Mitchell. Crazy that Donovan fell as low as he did in hindsight, though it's also semi-understandable just from such an undersized guard. But Donovan in LA, that's also something that's like, wow, that really changes up the future, because Donovan broke out immediately by comparison to Lonzo Ball, and obviously he was much better than Lonzo Ball. So to think LeBron more than likely still joins that Lakers team, I don't think that changes anything for them. And that honestly might mean that Donovan Mitchell ends up in New Orleans. It's potential that the Lakers would have made him untouchable and it still would have been the same trade. But let's say they do that and they still trade for AD, like Brandon Ingram. I guess Lonzo wouldn't be a factor. But let's say they manage to do it without including Mitchell. Then you have Mitchell, LeBron, and AD going forward. I think the Lakers get a lot more than one championship if that's the case. Because again, Donovan Mitchell was great immediately. That's very interesting to think about, because that really can change history going forward. The #3 pick for the Celtics was a real bitch to think about because of the context of the Celtics at the time. They were a good team that had a lottery pick because of the Nets trade. I decided to go with De'Aaron Fox. To me, I think this is not best player available, because I think De'Aaron and Bam Adebayo are in a pretty similar tier, but I value the guard more than the big man personally, unless that big man's like Jokic or something. I don't know. They had Al Horford at the time. They had Kyrie Irving at the time. Both of them would leave. Which position do you think is more important to fill? I personally felt as though point guard would be more important for them going forward after those guys left. So then you have De'Aaron Fox, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, or I guess actually no you don't, because Jayson Tatum got drafted #1. So then you have De'Aaron Fox and Jaylen Brown as your future going forward, which is a little bit more bleak than Jayson Tatum being there. But yeah, the actual team here kind of interrupts the fact that that is the pick. I would switch it for Bam if I felt like that was better situationally. I could flip those picks very easily, but I don't know. There's not a great selection here for the Celtics. There was a great one. It was Jayson Tatum. because he fit the timeline then and fit the long-term future. Not a great forward at this option. I'm not going to take OG Anunoby with the 3rd pick. Speaking of which, with the number 4 pick, I'm going to go with Bam Adebayo. Looking at how history played out, assuming that Bam would not make the Suns too good to get the 1st pick, which being that his career started off as slow as it did, although that was partially due to opportunity. I don't know. Assuming that they were still able to get the number 1 pick in the 2018 draft, you gotta think that they're not gonna take DeAndre Ayton if they have Bam, and they probably take Luka Doncic. So now you have Luka, Devin Booker, and Bam Adebayo all on the same team, and this would definitely be a much better alternate reality for the Suns. Especially better than fucking Dragon Bender. Isn't that who they took? Pretty sure it is. No, it was Josh Jackson. I forgot about him. With the number 5 pick, the Sacramento Kings are going to select Jarrett Allen. This was just simply a matter of best player available, but I'm pretty sure Boogie was traded. Even if he wasn't, I mean, they drafted Willie Cauley-Stein when he was on the team, so this isn't out of character for them. With the number 6 pick, the Orlando Magic select OG Anunoby. I actually thought about swapping really the next 2 picks with him. These next couple of guys are fairly interchangeable, but OG just simply ended up being the healthiest player thus far among those names. So for that reason, he's the pick that I would make, just because, you know, best ability is availability. With the number 7 pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Lonzo Ball. I actually think the idea of Lonzo with the Timberwolves is really fun, and I especially think that results in D'Angelo Russell not being traded there, and if that's the case, that results in Andrew Wiggins not being in Golden State, and that gets things interesting. That's definitely an area where the dominoes fall and you get a different picture than what you did originally because of the what if here. With the number 8 pick, the Knicks select Jonathan Isaac. If John Isaac had been healthy throughout a majority of his career, I would not be surprised if he went as high as number 3 in this draft, but the guy has barely been able to play NBA basketball. I truly think his potential is like a better Andre Karolinko, which I personally think is a little bit better than Bam and De'Aaron Fox, but he has barely played. When he did, the last time he played like nearly a full, like I think it was like half of a season, he was like in Defensive Player of the Year conversations, and that was when he was on the Magic and no one ever fucking watched the Magic. Jonathan Isaac has so much potential. He just needs to be healthy. With the number 9 pick, the Dallas Mavericks select John Collins. They originally took Dennis Smith Jr. in this pick, and I do think it'd be interesting if potentially John Collins is so good that it results in their lottery selection next year being a little bit worse. Maybe they miss out on Luka Doncic for this reason, or maybe they miss out on it because of the Suns having Bam Adebayo and deciding to select him number 1. There's definitely more significant ramifications in upcoming drafts as a result of this one, and really league-wide, because like the Andrew Wiggins to the Warriors trade ended up being a pretty big fucking deal, being that they just won a championship, and I don't know if they win it without that move. So a lot of shaking up happening here. And number 10, the Kings, I couldn't decide between Monte Morris or Kyle Kuzma. I guess I would go with Monte Morris just so that Jarrett Allen could have a pick and roll partner. But I think those two are a similar tier of player. Kyle Kuzma has been a very up and down guy. Lately, he's been more up, but I have to factor in the downs as well. I don't know. I could see it going either way. I personally am going to go with Monte Morris, again, just because I think that's a better fit. But if you think Kyle Kuzma would be the better pick, I'm not going to argue with you. But that is my redraft of the top 10 picks of the 2017 NBA draft. Let me know what your redraft would have been. Let me know if you want to see this series continue by dropping a like, as I mentioned before. But yeah, that is it. Goodbye.